Hi, everybody. I am Leatrice Elsie. I'm the Executive Director for Hammond's House Museum. Welcome to another edition of Conversations about Jazz and Other Distractions with Carl Anthony. We are super excited about this show. Actually, we're super excited about all the shows. But tonight, we have a good friend, Eric Reed, is going to be our guest tonight. Carl will tell you all about him when he comes in. But let me just go ahead and take care quickly of our housekeeping because I want to make sure that we have enough time for this conversation. Eric has had some new experiences in his life that he's going to talk about, and then of course we're going to talk about the music. But I'd like to first thank those people who help us keep our doors open and help us keep the music playing. Fulton County Board of Commissioners through the Fulton County Arts Council, the City of Atlanta the mayor's office of cultural affairs. Usually I have my little cheat sheet. We got so wrapped up in conversation earlier that I did not write it. But thank you, Ravi, for giving me my cheat sheet up on the screen. I appreciate it. The Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta, AT&T, Time Warner, the city, and then we already said the City of Atlanta, Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs, and of course the National Performance Network. These are all of the people who, in all the organizations and institutions who have really been supporting the Hammons House Museum through this COVID situation, and we really appreciate their support because without them, I will say that our situation will be very, very different. And then also, I would be remiss if I didn't thank our donors, our individual donors, and our members. Members who have become members, sustaining members, have really been keeping everything going. Who knew when we started that program that we would end up having this major pandemic that really um, would really stop our ability to bring memberships in the way that we usually do, which is through events at the museum. We always got a lot of memberships that came in through events and special events, our public programs, as well as when we go out into the community. And since we're not doing any of those things now, membership has really crawled to a snail's pace. And so if you'd like to become a member of the Hammons House Museum, and we would love to have you, please go to our website, hammondshouse.org, to donate as well as to become a member. So that is it for me. I am going to now welcome Carl into the stream. So Carl, come on up and let's talk about your show tonight.
Hello, Leatrice. Always great to see you.
I know, always good to see you too, Carl. You have a good show tonight. I'm really excited about it.
So am I. This is one that we've been waiting for. We tried him to come on with Marcus Printup and Wycliffe Gordon, but things happened and he couldn't do it. So we had to bring him back. And this is one I've been looking forward to.
Yeah. Eric it's always great to talk to Eric. And like I said, he's got some new experiences that he's been going through lately,
Right.
which he's going to share with you. But also, to be able to talk about the music. Eric has, certainly as a part of the big band, did his thing, having a gospel background, and then the work that he's done in duet situations with some of our favorite artists, as well as him as a band leader himself. So, Eric is really in his career, in his, fairly short career, we really think about the fact that he's only 50, has done a whole lot. So, but Eric is my friend and he is the king. Me and Eric have hung everywhere. We done hung in New York. We done hung in Atlanta. We done hung in LA. I mean, we hang. And, jazz is all about the hang,
Right.
Listening to amazing music and having amazing conversations. And we built a friendship around the hang. So enjoy it. I'm really looking forward to it. So have a great conversation, Carl.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this conversation about jazz and other distractions. I want to thank my fabulous audience for joining me once again, our 11th show. And my guest this evening is a pianist. He's a composer. He's an arranger, artistic director, and educator. He's a Wynton Marsalis alum. He has been a member of a group of musicians labeled the Young Lions, who was prominence in the 80s and 90s. He is a leader in his own right, not just of bands, but in the direction jazz is presently heading. And quarantining and, just having to do like this through Zoom or StreamYard or, what's it been like for you?
I'm an introvert, so this is business as usual for me.
Okay.
You know, basically, it's like when the quarantine, when the pandemic hit, like officially in March, and start shutting everything down. And they started quarantine. You can't go out and you can't be near people. I'm like, bet. you mean I don't have to talk to people? Okay, cool. The worst part about that was not being able to hug my mama. I hadn't hugged my mama for like 2 months, maybe even 3, and that wasn't cool at all, because you know my family, we're all very, very close, and we hang out in each other's homes and celebrating and all that kind of stuff, birthdays and whatnot. So because my mother's in advanced age, she's at high risk. So, you know, I would go down there at least once every other week to visit, spend a couple of days. So when I wasn't able to do that, I said, I call BS, you know. So, and I'm sure that's a very similar narrative for everybody else. Everybody else, you know, was dealing with the same kind of things, not being able to see people, not really taking it seriously. You know, it was very strange. It was very weird. But again, you're telling me that I can't go out and be amongst people? I'm cool. Because as an introvert, I was okay with that. I mean, I think I'm in, what do they call it? An introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert? Like when I'm out in public, I can do it. Hey, man. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, baby, good to see you. Oh, yeah, how old is little Johnny? Is he 3 already? And then, all right, peace. I'm out. Back home, phone shut off, don't bother me. That's just kind of how it is. But I took advantage of the time that I found that I had once all of the performances and gigs and tours and things had gotten canceled, to get back to the basics, get back to the piano, and spruce some things up that were kind of rusty. My muscles had kind of atrophied a little bit. I made the best of it, and I was doing okay, Carl. I was doing okay. The Ahmaud Arbery news had not quite taken storm yet, and this is now April, May. I was getting a little stir crazy, and then George Floyd and Breonna Taylor on top of that. Well, that's when I started to get a little like, wait a minute, hold on, I can't deal with this. So it was really starting to get crazy around June. And in the meantime, I had this job waiting for me in the University of Tennessee. So I just had to make it from March to July without wanting to throw myself off a bridge. You know,
it's interesting, you know, because people, you know, they kind of lost their way with the whole pandemic.
Yes.
And kind of forgot about the social injustice that was going on, the
Yes.
climate that's going on. You know, I mean, we're facing more than just the pandemic on a daily basis, you know, because those other things are not going away either.
That's right.
We're not taking headline news.
That's right.
You know? So I understand. And, you know, like you, it didn't affect me because I love being at home by myself on my computer doing what I do, you know, researching and reading and, you know, doing all that stuff. So, you know, it got me a little bit like you with the not being able to go hang out with friends, go to the movies, you know, and just take a break from the daily routine. You know?
Right.
So the best I could do was go for a walk every day if I could. You know, an hour outside by myself, and it was kind of cool. You know, no traffic on the street, no people walking around. It's like, okay, I'm out here all alone. Great, you know.
Beautiful, beautiful.
You know, so it was really, really, you know, a cool period in that particular period of time.
Yes.
But you started in your father's storefront church.
Yes.
And now you're an internationally renowned musician. What was your journey like from church to big time?
Ooh, haven't quite made big time, but the journey is ongoing. And looking, you know, I'm talking like I'm 100 years old, but looking over my life thus far, I look at the journey and I look at all of the cuts and scrapes and the bruises and the wounds and the battle scars and the broken hearts and the betrayals, and I combine that with the triumphs and the mountaintop experiences and the joys and the time spent with friends and making new relationships, mending some broken ones, letting go of the ones that needed to be let go. I would not trade this journey for anything. And I know that's one of those cliches that you hear, especially of folks of a certain age. But I have to keep reminding myself, had I not gone through that, I would not have gotten to that, which led to that, which allowed me to meet that person, which allowed me to, and now here. And that's the way it had to happen, because everybody has a storyline. And if you change one incident in the storyline, the ending is very different.
Or if you don't pay attention to the story, the ending can be different.
Very true. Well, you have to also know that you're in a story.
Yeah.
Everybody has to recognize, not recognize. Everybody has to recognize that the journey, the story, the narrative, all these things, everybody has one. For me, my beliefs and what I've been raised to believe and educated to believe, and what I have found to be true. It's kind of like this thing with religion, and we can get all into that with these evangelicals and these nuts. When you're raised believing a certain thing, but the opposite continues to manifest, then you're delusional. So you can be raised as a child to believe that these people will always be inferior and these people should always be superior. But then when you see the injustice and you continue on the same way you have been, then you're living a delusion, you're living a lie. And essentially, that's part of what systemic racism is. That's what the system is. For me, I was raised to believe certain things, and I found a lot of those things to be true. So one of the things that I found to be true is that my story has already been written. I'm just acting it out. Next year, I don't know what's going to happen, but the story knows, the story writer, the author knows. In my case, I believe that author is God. I believe in predestination. I believe in preordained. I don't believe in fate. I don't believe in accidents. I don't believe in accidents. I don't believe in coincidences. I think things happen for a reason, good or bad, whether it's a family member, a loved one being murdered, or whether it's someone, rising to president or whatever it is. I believe all that stuff is pre-planned. And it sounds crazy. People might think I'm delusional. But what I don't believe is that injustice and oppression is supposed to be a condition or a dynamic that we accept. We are absolutely supposed to fight. Because I was raised to believe that. You fight for the underprivileged. You defend the weak. That's in the Bible too, you nuts. you defend the weak.
Well, it's all about interpretation, and everybody interprets it for their own purpose.
Yes.
But I don't really want to get into the whole politics and religion of it all. We can talk about that for hours.
Okay, for sure.
And I understand that your journey took you to a place where I was at WCLK doing a show when I was given a copy of Your Soldier's Hymn. And I took a quick listen to it and I immediately put it into my rotation. Wow. Because it was just, first it was the cover, that, dedicated to Art Blakey, and it's like, So what was the inspiration for you to pay tribute to that great drummer as your debut release?
Art Blakey embodied jazz music. He embodied the Black experience in the United States. He embodied the university of the streets, if you will, the idea of the mentorship, tutelage, apprenticeship with the Jazz Messenger starting in 1947 up until he died in 1990. So for almost 50 years, Art Blakey was a pioneer and a champion of young talent. So any young jazz musician who had an ounce of sense wanted to be in Art Blakey's band. And I'm very proud to say that I am an honorary jazz messenger. I didn't get a chance to play in Art Blakey's band, but I did sit in with him. And thank you, Javon Jackson and Frank Lacey, for allowing that to happen, for engendering that particular situation. Art Blakey embodies swing. He embodies so much of what America is about. You know, when we talk about Black people, we talk about Black people and we talk about Americans like it's two different things. And the bottom line is no Black people, no America. End of story.
True.
And don't talk to me about forefathers and constitutions and declarations. Don't talk to me about that stuff. No Black people, no America. It doesn't get built. It doesn't get established without Black people. Period. As the millennials say, period. And Art Blakey embodied all of that. He embodied the ancestors as well. Art Blakey was the first jazz drummer I ever heard on record. Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers live at the Cafe Bohemia, 1955. And when I heard that, it sounded like church to me. So again, that was supposed to happen. That wasn't no accident.
True. And it was a great record. It was a great way of coming out.
Thank you.
And over the years, people have known you mainly as a pianist. But you are also a prolific composer. Noting, some of your favorites as ICHM, which you have to tell me what that means because I still don't know what that means. And Wish. Both from here, your release here, Prayer and Stand, and Reflections of a Grateful Heart, and Hope in View and The Way to Love from A Light in Darkness. Those are, like when you listen to those, you understand what composing is. If you really pay attention, So let's start with, what does ICHM mean?
ICHM, originally the title was, first of all, it was written in tribute and dedication to the great pianist and composer Herbie Nichols.
Okay.
And originally I called it HNIC.
Mm-hmm.
And it was supposed to stand for Herbie Nichols in Charge.
Okay.
But then when I looked at the acronym, I said, nah, that's not going to work. Let me flip these letters. Let me flip these letters around, lest somebody misunderstand. So it's I actually see, I visualize, I view Herbie Nichols, ICHM.
Okay, cool. Well, on that, when you compose, do you have a muse, or does your inspiration come from your life experiences?
Totally from my life experiences.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely. When I first started composing, it was, at 18, who's got foresight, intuition at 18, really? You know what I'm saying? You know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. And you're too stupid to realize you don't know everything, It's like my father used to always say, you think you know everything, huh? He said, well, I'm not young enough to know everything like you. And I was just writing things that sounded like other musicians. So I would write something that sounded like Horace Silver. I wrote something that sounded like something that Cedar Walton would write. I tried to write in the style of all of my heroes, because I'd had experiences, but the experiences were not, I didn't see them as profound enough to be able to understand how to embrace them. So once I began to transition just, going from year to year in my life and in my career, music became much more of a personal experience for me. And things like ICHN and Wish and Prayer, all of those songs are very personal. I love Herbie Nichols' music. Herbie Nichols is widely ignored in music. Wish is a song that I wrote for my father after he died. All the things I wished I'd had a chance to say to him, to talk to him about, to get advice on before he passed. So that's what Wish is about. And Prayer is something that I wrote, and this is really heavy. George Cables and Dennis Irwin both had taken extremely ill, very ill around the same time. And they were really suffering. The night that I debuted it in New York, Dennis Irwin had died. George Cables was going into the hospital to get a liver and a kidney transplant.
Wow.
Liver and kidney transplants. And he's still here, still doing the damn thing, as they say. Still here, still playing. Beautiful human being. And I think just his positivity of spirit, the beauty of his energy has really been driving him to fight to stay alive, So I wrote Prayer for George. I was praying for him, and then the prayers turned into music.
We're going to take a listen to one of your compositions called Happiness, which is also the title to that release. What was the story behind that particular tune?
I think I was 29 or 30, somewhere in there, maybe 31 when I wrote that. And I was thinking about my childhood. And up until about 15 years old was when I became an addict. Not substance abuse, but addicted to selfishness, addicted to lack of self-awareness, addicted to trying to be a people pleaser, And I made a really wrong turn someplace at the age of 15. And I spent about 15, 20 years off track. And I finally sobered up by the time I wrote Happiness. So Happiness was about that time. Everything up to 15.
Because when I look back over my life, when I left home, the iron fist of a Marine drill sergeant, I did the same thing. I got very selfish about my time. You either want to do it my way or hit the highway, and you don't realize how much you spoil yourself by doing that. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want, and nobody can tell me, anything. And you don't listen to those people that are around you like, slow down, boy. So I get it. I definitely get it. So, let's listen to a couple of minutes of Happiness so people can hear some of your talent.
Thank you.
right. Ooh. That album cover, that looked like you were in your player years right then. You know, shirt open, collar out,
What?
you know.
What? Oh, I think. What'd you say? What's that now? Yeah, you know that was the side of the industry that always just made me so. I used to have to take volumes on the days of photo shoots because I mean they sent me out for facials, makeup artists, and costume designs, and I'm like, oh man, come on, can we just, you know, why I got to do all this? Why y'all spending all this money? You ain't gonna make it back.
But we got to sell music, and we got to sell you, and it's, you know, people want to look, you know, and unfortunately, you know, that part of the industry is something that we got to just deal with. You know?
I dig it. I dig it. But it did make me happy. That hearing that, I hadn't heard that in a little while, and it made me happy all over again. And that was the feeling that I was trying to convey in the music. I was doing a lot of writing for larger ensembles, and I was just writing crazy stuff. I was listening to a lot of Elmo Hope.
Okay.
Elmo Hope. His wife Bertha, Miss Bertha, was telling me that, you know, Elmo wouldn't consider the range of the horns. He'd have a saxophone player playing an octave above his range, and he have the trumpet player playing real low. He wrote what he heard, and he had the instruments doing their thing. And because, you know, in school they teach you instrumentation, they teach you transposition, they teach you all of the ranges of the instrument, and they show you can put the saxophone between this highest note and this lowest note. I said, but yeah, I'm hearing the saxophone like about an octave higher than that, so I'll just find somebody who can do that.
True. When you work with another composer's music, like Lucky Thompson or Kenny Clarke, how do you make it your own? You know, because those are such prolific compositions that they write and still stay in the groove, you know, so people still recognize the music, but it's yours.
Glenn Gould said in an interview in the early 1960s, he brought up the idea or the concept of recomposing Beethoven. And when you think of European art music, you think of Bach and Rachmaninoff and Chopin and these folks, you don't recompose their music. You play the notes that they wrote. Anything else is sacrilege. But it took me a couple of years to understand what he was saying. And basically what he actually said in the interview, he said, when you're playing repertoire that has been played by dozens, literally dozens, hundreds of other piano players and other violinists and sung by other singers and other orchestras, and it's also been recorded, you have to find something different to do, or you should consider another line of work. Those were Glenn Gould's words, talking about classical music, right? European art music, the great and revered composers. And Thelonious Monk had a similar point of view about being yourself and having individuality, you know, finding individuality in the things that you play. So when you listen to Thelonious Monk, the album that he did called Thelonious Monk Plays Duke Ellington, you can hear the Duke Ellington influence, but you can also hear it's completely Thelonious Monk. So it's, you know, it's Thelonious Monk, it's influenced by Duke Ellington, it's very personal, and it's also jazz. So it's 3 in 1. You know, the 3 is my favorite number. Those elements are all there. The individuality, the respect and honoring of the tradition, and the entity itself. And Thelonious Monk, I can't think of too many musicians who are more individualistic than Thelonious Monk. Right. So I try to do the same thing when I play standards and when I play other people's music. I immediately start kind of like I take a piece, like if I'm going to play something like a Duke Ellington composition, Come Sunday. What I normally do is I take Duke Ellington's exact melody, exactly as written, because I believe in honoring that. I take it exactly as written with no chord changes. And then I treat the piece almost like it's a contrafact. So, you know, with a contrafact, you take a composition that has pre-existing melody and chords. You remove the melody and you replace it with a new melody. So that's how we got so many songs based on George Gershwin's I Got Rhythm. We got Cottontail by Duke Ellington. We got Anthropology by, I believe that's Dizzy Gillespie, if I'm not mistaken. We got all of these different, we got Eternal Triangle by Sonny Stitt, with, of course, a different bridge, but all still based on George Gershwin's I Got Rhythm. So this is sort of like a contrafact, except I would take the exact melody and put in all different new chord changes, moving them all around. And that's one way that I make it personal, is by reharmonizing it completely. And then, of course, when it comes to the melody, I don't necessarily play the melody exactly unless it's arranged. But if it's just a reharmonization, I'll take my liberties with the melody.
Okay, because I noticed when I was listening, doing the research, I listened to Lucky's version of Sun Out.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
And your version of Sun Out. And although there are similarities, you start off very quiet,
yes,
very slow,
yes,
and then you gear it up into that mid-tempo,
yes,
that he starts out with,
yes,
and stays with all the way through. So it was interesting how to hear both of them do the same thing.
yes. Well, Carl, you froze. I don't know if you're talking or not. Uh-oh. I think I'll talk and hopefully you'll unfreeze. And I hope we're still on.
We're back.
Okay, you're good. Okay, sorry about that. Were you done? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
No, yeah, I was done. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Didn't want to interrupt. When I'm playing some of these pieces, with some of these compositions by some of these composers, sometimes I have the composers in mind. And it doesn't just become deeply personal. It becomes emotional and almost as if I'm channeling their trauma. Now, I know that sounds a little offish, but bear with me for a second. I wrote a song for Donny Hathaway called Garden of Sorrow a couple of years ago. And it was supposed to give a musical depiction of what might have been going on in his mind when he was battling his mental issues.
Mm-hmm.
And Sun Out is a similar story. Lucky Thompson was anything but lucky in his career. This was one of the pioneers of modern jazz saxophone. He was right there with Monk at the beginning, and a phenomenal saxophone player. But he encountered many disappointments and some betrayals in the music industry, and eventually just left the music industry altogether, and was almost a derelict towards the end of his life. It was kind of sad to be such a brilliant musician and for that to be his au revoir. So the song Sun Out, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the original recording was Cedar Walton on Fender Rhodes. And I think Sam Jones and Louis Hayes. I could be wrong, but I think like 1971, 1972. Such a pretty song, such a beautiful song. And this was a guy, there aren't too many musicians like that who can kind of traverse the decades and remain contemporary, keep their finger on the pulse. Miles Davis obviously comes to mind. You think about Mary Lou Williams was able to be one of the pioneers of bebop music and then come all the way up to the 1970s, 1980s and working with young musicians and still being innovative. Duke Ellington, Horace Silver, and Lucky Thompson being a so-called bebop, hard bop musician, to write something like Sun Out in 1972 was just such a contemporary and modern piece. I wanted to play it because I had done a whole performance of Lucky Thompson's music. Great music. And I fell in love with Sun Out. And I wanted to start, like you said, you peeped it like perfectly. You described it perfectly. You were able to hear that. It's amazing. Not to mention, I was also battling a fever of 103.
Wow.
Because we were in the studio and I woke up that morning just sick as a dog. It was snowing. It was like towards the end of December. I was in New York City, sick as a dog. But $20 is $20, if you know what I'm saying.
Exactly. Gotta get paid.
I was about to cancel this record date. I would have had to have a limb hanging off. And, wait, hold on. It's just a flash wound. Hold on, wait, give me some tape. I'll be, $20 is $20. So I said, let me get my butt to this studio and y'all just stay over there. Y'all be in the booth, but we finna make this record so I can make these lamb tongues. Christmas is here. So I'm in the studio. So I was really pacing myself because I was on the verge of literally vomiting.
Mm.
So that start, that introduction was born out of trying not to pass out. I said, let me just take my time doing this. Let me just be cool, and then give the band the cue. So yeah, that's what happened. And Carl, talk for a little bit. My battery, I forgot to plug my computer up. I'm going to grab my plug. I'll be back in 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
So what we're going to do is on that note, let's just listen to a little bit of Sun Out from his Something Beautiful release. It's a Lucky Thompson tune, and you'll hear exactly what we've been talking about while he goes and gets himself queued up.
I am so sorry. I apologize. That's so unprofessional. I didn't realize I was going to run out of juice.
It's quite all right.
Okay, we're good. Sorry about that.
That's the kind of music I listen to when I would be on a road trip. just something to just ease you down the road, keep you in that non-speeding groove, because one of my colleagues at CLK told me, he said, Carl, it took me a minute to figure out that the music I was playing was causing me to speed because it was so up-tempo and charging that I was racing. He said, I had to learn to put on slower music to keep my foot off the gas pedal.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're in a club dancing, if you're dancing a slow dance, it's cool. But as soon as that music hits and it starts popping, you're frantic,
Right.
And it always got me in that mode where I would put on that tempo of music to just cruise down the highway and keep the police off my butt, kind of thing.
Yes, sir. That's a difficult tempo. We call that a grown man's tempo. Because you gotta it's kind of like so what? Not a whole lot going on. Just
enough.
Like that slow. What's that low burn? They tell you in the recipe book, low simmer. It ain't gotta be no high wildfire. Just a low simmer for 15 minutes, and then remove from stove, et cetera, et cetera. That low simmer.
Yeah. You had mentioned Monk earlier, and I was intrigued when I got the first one, and then you followed it with two more. The Dancing Monk, the Baddest Monk, and the Adventurous Monk.
Yes.
As a pianist, why would you tackle Monk?
Because Monk is a bad. That's why. It's shut your mouth. Yeah, so it's Thelonious Monk. It's Thelonious Monk. Thelonious Monk is part of the curriculum. It's like Bach for European art music. You don't get out of or to the next level of piano without Bach. End of story. You're not going to study that music without studying and analyzing some 4-part harmonies and things like that, and Bach chorales and things like that. Thelonious Monk is part of the curriculum. He is jazz music. Much like Art Blakey, he embodies jazz music. He embodies the Black experience. He embodies what it means to be a good American. A great American. If we're going to make America great again, then let's look at Thelonious Monk's life. How about that?
Mm-hmm. True, because there's so many stories about that man that, again, we could talk for hours about Monk.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You continually return to your roots on a regular basis, and I hear it in your music. Your album Stand, Mercy and Grace, and Reflections of a Grateful Heart all take us back to the church. It's the underpinning of what you do, and listening to it, there's a pensive quietness, like a reverence in a lot of your music that's so calming. Is the process equally calming for you, meditative, or does it bring you a certain amount of peace as you compose these pieces?
I'll share an anecdote with you that Reverend C.L. Franklin shared about his daughter, the great Aretha Franklin, at the legendary and famous Amazing Grace recording that was done in Los Angeles in 1970, 71, 72. He was invited by Reverend James Cleveland, the brilliant Reverend James Cleveland, to come up and say a few words. And of course, he was clean. He had his hair slicked down and processed, fried, dyed, laid to the side. He had on his, leisures. He was clean. Pops was clean. He got up in the pulpit, and he was up there for maybe about 7 minutes total. He knew how to do it right because it was his daughter's night. It was Aretha's night. And he says, and I want to close. I want to close by sharing a little anecdote. I was in the dry cleaners, picking up some clothes, and I asked the lady, I said, did you see Aretha Franklin on TV last night? She said, oh, yes, I saw it. He said, well, what did you think? She said, oh, I thought it was nice. But I'll be glad when she comes back to the church. And Reverend C.L. Franklin says, Listen, baby, let me tell you something. I'm doing my best here. He says, if you want to know the truth, Aretha never left the church. Well, applause. Amen. I know that's right, Pastor. That whole thing. I never left my roots. My roots. Not these roots. They left me. They abandoned me years ago. Years ago, they just did me wrong, turned their back on me, and everybody just committed suicide. They just gone. That's okay. That's all right. It's all good. Got love for them. Here today, gone tomorrow. But I never left my roots. You can't. You can't leave, or let's put it this way, your roots can't leave you. That's for sure. You can kind of take a detour, move away, find some other, distractions or other paths, but your roots, they don't leave you. So that education, that indoctrination, that teaching has always been there, even when I sort of moved away from God because I couldn't understand this, that, or the third. I wrote a piece, I wrote a journal rather, called 30 Days Without God. It was one summer, it was August, just a few years ago. I want to say it was like 2016 or 17. So consider the timing, right? I said, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you're doing. And since you don't feel obliged to tell me nothing to fill me in, hey, peace. 30 days. And I just documented my experience. 30 days without God. No prayer, no Bible reading, no acknowledgement. Didn't say grace over my food. Nothing. And I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel a thing. I said, well, okay. Because it's deep within, So whenever I perform or whenever I play or minister, if you will, the roots are always there. That church sound and feeling are always there, even if it's not completely apparent or obvious, even if it's more subtle. I guarantee you at some point or another, I'm going to sneak a little Holy Ghost in there. I'm going to slide a little amen chord in there, someplace. And I'm not trying to, I don't separate. I don't see it like gospel and jazz. For me, it's like that.
Well, one led into the other anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. When you look at the lineage of our music,
yes,
it's integral to playing. So
and Thelonious Monk, Fats Waller, Nat Cole, Bobby Timmons, all church boys.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting that you said, 30 days without God. And I think about, my 20s, I knew he was always there on my shoulder because he came when I needed him most.
Yes.
But for a lot of time, I didn't think about him because it just was. He's there.
Yes.
He's got my back. I'm his favorite baby boy. I tell people that all the time.
Nice. Yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
He's not in the forefront of our minds until we get past that period.
You preaching.
And then we see the small miracles.
Yes.
Getting that parking space right in front of the place you got to go when it's downpouring and you don't have to walk for 10 feet to get inside instead of 3 blocks.
Yes. You're preaching, Reverend Anthony. You're preaching.
I understand what you're saying. It's interesting. You're no stranger to Hollywood, and you've spent a whole bunch of years in LA, from childhood on. And, as a movie buff, I'm very familiar with a lot of the music that is made in movies, but I didn't realize that you scored some of the music for Life, the Eddie Murphy, Martin Lawrence, late Bernie Mac vehicle.
Yes.
And, a lot of people don't know you, that side of you, that, you scoring music for major and independent films. What was the experience like giving instrumental voice to that story and those actors?
At one time, I thought that I wanted to kind of be in that scene, in that world. But I wanted only if I was going to be able to compose jazz. That's all I ever wanted to do. I didn't see myself like as John Williams, doing Star Wars and Superman and things like that. That wasn't where I was coming from. I wanted to do, Some Like It Hot, or I Want to Live, or Man with the Golden Arm. I wanted to do jazz for these movie soundtracks. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you dig? Yeah. So I couldn't, I didn't really have my mind wrapped around the industry and who you had to know and getting in and film scoring and film scores. Like, I don't want to do it that way. And I was a little bit, delusional, thinking I was going to do it any other way. But opportunities did present themselves, being in Los Angeles at some point or another. If you live in Los Angeles and you're a musician, you're going to wind up playing a bit part in a movie or in a TV show or doing a commercial, because it's LA. If you live in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, probably not. But if you live in LA, or if you live in New York, you're probably going to wind up as a passerby in an episode of Law and Order SVU. That's just how it is. So a lot of those things kind of just rolled off by virtue of who I knew. Oh, hey, Eric, we're doing this sideline thing. We need you to come on film and just pretend, just mime that you're playing piano. You're not really playing, but you're just miming it. And it's a juke joint scene. It's 1942. And they dress you up, And I did that a few times. I did that for A Different World. I actually sang, and I was in a choir in A Different World from like 1987. So I was a teenager. I did something recently for what was the Dolomite, Eddie Murphy in Dolomite. So I was a piano player in a barrel house scene there. So if you're paying attention, you'd be like, wait a minute, who's big old round head is that? Is that Eric Reed? But one of the really cool things, if I can brag just a little bit, this was like my acting debut, if you will. This commercial went national. And when a commercial goes national, baby, hey, make it rain. I did a commercial for Verizon with Marion McPartland. So she was supposed to be this former teacher of mine that was living in the UK, and I was in the States. And we got on the phone and said we were having, a little piano duo thing over the phone. And my one line was, "Good night, Marion." Cha-ching. And that's just how it works. When you have a speaking part, you get paid. Who knew? But as far as scoring, like I said, it's always been, a song as a backdrop in a scene here, a restaurant there, some outside thing, a film cue, a movie cue, TV cue, something like that, or something for a commercial. I can't say that I'm in that scene. I'm not like a first call for stuff like that, but things do come my way, and it's a beautiful thing. I appreciate that, and they continue to pay. So listen, not for nothing. I'm not bragging. Those royalties, those residuals, got me through COVID. Because when the gigs dried up, the bills were still due. Fortunately, the bill collectors and the landlords were all understanding. They couldn't evict you and this and that for non-payment of rent. And, it was looking a little funky. And then some of them, the ASCAP, hey, thank you, ASCAP. Thank you, Jesus. Oh, Harry Fox. Oh, that Sound Exchange. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Okay. Right. It's something. Right. So I encourage all musicians, write. That's where the money is.
Going back to the East Coast, you did a lot of Broadway and Hollywood musical tunes. Porgy and Bess, Little Night Music, King and I, Willy Wonka.
Some research. I did some research. Yeah.
You put together some pieces that I was very familiar with because I grew up on Broadway. My mom was a New Yorker. She loved Broadway, as a kid, she always was down there. So she had all of these Broadway soundtracks.
Yes.
Fiorello and like it's The King and I and Carousel. And, these are the things I listened to growing up. So when you did it, I was like, oh my God, And then, I think I was 19 when I heard Pure Imagination.
Wow. Okay.
You know, when Gene Wilder sang it in the movie, you know.
Yes, yes.
And then you turn around and you do it, and it's so sentimental. It's so emotional, you know, your performance, which
I made, like you said, I made it personal. It's always personal, but these were just like you. These were musicals and sound scores, musical scores that I grew up listening to. So, and of course, that music from Tin Pan Alley and these musicals by Cole Porter and Rodgers and Hammerstein and Rodgers and Hart and Jerome Kern, they all form the part of the greatness of American music. And jazz music obviously incorporated many of these standards into their repertoire as well. And you would see it was a common thing for jazz musicians after about the 1950s or so to do jazz arrangements of whole musical scores. Kenny Burrell and Hank Jones did an album called Here's Love, based on Meredith Willson's musical Here's Love. Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers did things from Lerner and Lowe, Oscar Peterson, all of these great songbooks and all of these standards that helped to, you know, provide musical vehicles foundation for jazz musicians to improvise. And then musicians really started to get more into composing. And so we get people like Duke Ellington and James P. Johnson, and then we get stablemates from Benny Golson and all these beautiful songs he wrote, and Horace Silver. So jazz musicians really started to come more into their own as original composers. And my latest record, which is called For Such a Time as This, combines original music, and it involves an arrangement, includes an arrangement of Stella by Starlight from what movie is that from? Something about an invitation or something like that. I can't think. But these songs are still staples in the repertoire today. But I'm recording more original music, and this album in particular that's either out already or it's coming out, it stems from personal experience, which is very different from the concept albums of doing all musicals and things like that, doing all standards. This is much more personal. It's much more personal in that these were things that I wrote during the pandemic, and also my expression of what was going on, like I said, with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. It was interesting for me because I really had all of this exorbitant amounts of time that I didn't have prior to the pandemic to really sit and fine tune some very specific things in my playing and in my writing and in my arranging. So I did a contrafact of Cherokee. I didn't want to give the surprise away, but I did. Did a contrafact of Cherokee that sounds like it could have been written in 1948, but when you listen carefully, it's like, that's not quite that long ago. So, you know, all of that, like I said, all of my experiences have been informed by the journey, and certainly musicals have played a large part in that.
You apprenticed with Benny Carter, Freddie Hubbard, Joe Henderson.
Yes.
Now, I understand in my experience, you know, an apprentice doesn't get paid a whole bunch, but he learns a whole lot. So, what did you take away from each of those experiences?
Well, Carl, I was just so glad to be on stage with Benny Carter. This was a man who was one of the creators of this music, one of the pioneers, one of the first Black composers to compose for film. And what he meant, and what he still means to music, to American music, to swing, to jazz, to the alto saxophone, a heavy influence on Charlie Parker. What he means to the world, what he meant to the world, and what he means to the world. Being on stage and just looking at him was awe-inspiring for me. He was just a beautiful human being. Worked with Joe Henderson. Joe Henderson didn't have a whole lot to say. He wasn't very chatty. When he put that horn in his mouth,
Exactly.
He didn't talk a whole lot until he got on the phone, and then all of a sudden I couldn't shut him up. I don't know what that was about. Maybe, well, he's definitely an introvert for sure. Could not shut him up. I was on the phone for 3 hours. I was like, "Wow, Joe. Okay, I'm hungry, Joe. I want to eat. Yeah, go eat. I'll be here." Joe, call me back. You know, Freddie Hubbard. Freddie Hubbard was nuts, but when he put his mouth to that horn, my God, you haven't heard anything like it. You just haven't. You just haven't heard anything like that. Carl, like I said, my journey and my experience, my journey is no more extraordinary than anybody else my age or older. We were all around the same time experiencing these wonderful things, and appreciating whether we were with a band leader that was particularly magnanimous with the money or frugal. Didn't really make a difference. We were just glad to be in the number. We were just glad to be on a stage with these guys. We were glad to be called. We were glad to be hired. I'm fortunate. I'm a very, very fortunate young man.
I've heard the term artist in residence, but for those of us like me who really don't know what that means, it's a time-honored position that I want to say a lot of people have had, but not a whole lot of people have had.
Okay.
Where are you in that, location, and how did you become one, and what encompasses your responsibilities? Because I'm thinking that artist in residence is you go in there and you make art or you write music or, but is it more than that?
It's more than that. It's some of that. It's all of that. It's a pretty generic term, and it's a term that can be applied however the employer wishes. Essentially, I am present. That's basically it. I do have piano students at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. I do have some academic classes, and I do coach an ensemble. But essentially, I'm kind of just there. I go and visit with the other ensembles, and I listen to what they're doing, and I sit in on other instructors' lessons if they let me. I knock on their, hey, can I come in? They say, sure, come on in. And sometimes I'll play, if it's okay. Can I accompany? I always make sure I ask. And generally, unless I have a student or I'm on a conference call, my door stays open. So the students and the faculty, everybody, they just come by. Hey, how you doing? I'm doing all right. Okay. And they kind of just come on in because we got to be careful because of COVID. You got to watch the distance and things like that. Right. So, but there's enough room in my office that people can distance themselves. And the students are more than welcome. The faculty, of course, if they wish. If the door's open, like I said, you're more than welcome to come in and sit down, and I'll stop what I'm doing and talk and hang. Like I said, if I can make the time to do that. So it's a fairly broad label, and it can be applied as the employer wishes.
Interesting. As a producer, I've always been cognizant of the inclusion of females, women in the industry, and everything that I've done. From hiring band leaders to vocalists to because I think it's important that they're visible on and off the stage, and a lot of times we don't know who's behind the stage pulling the strings because we never hear about them, or we don't see enough females in bands that they're not leading necessarily. Did that conversation of gender equity ever enter into your world as a musician?
Only within the past 10 years or so, as it's become more prominent. With the political climate and with the social injustices, it's finally in everyone's faces. Now, when I was 18 years old and I was emerging on the scene as a sideman, as a band leader, and sideman is another one of those patriarchal terms that we're trying to reconcile. When I was 18 years old, it was dudes. It was just dudes. And it didn't occur to me to ask, well, where are the women? It didn't occur to me because I was too busy trying to make sure I was on the gig. So I could care less about other women being around, let alone other dudes. I wanted to be the only dude in the room sitting at that piano chair because you can't have more than one piano player at a time. So, everybody's kind of, grabbing for the gig. So at 18, I didn't have the foresight to even ask that question. Didn't even occur to me to say, hey, where are all the women? Because historically, and we're understanding why now, historically, women have just not been acknowledged across the board, but specifically in jazz, they just weren't acknowledged that much. We all knew about the same ones: Mary Lou Williams, Joanne King, Marion McPartland, Lil Hardin Armstrong, Dorothy Donegan, Hazel Scott. We always heard about the same women all the time. So where were the rest of them? So in my 18-year-old mind, I'm thinking, I guess they just don't like the music. I'm 18, don't cancel me. I had no way to think that this was not diverse. I wasn't thinking about this being inequitable or or not inclusive. I'm just thinking, well, I guess this just it is what it is. Again, when you're raised under a certain dynamic, you just think that's what it is until you're exposed to another point of view. And go ahead.
Yeah, when you hear about all the women who kept jazz alive during the war years.
Sure.
When all those male musicians were overseas playing in Army bands, Marine bands, Navy bands, there were women who had filled those slots stateside and kept, like Viola Smith, and the list goes on and on and on.
It's endless. Yes,
but
and we're learning more and more about them. Yeah,
exactly. But they're left out of the story.
Yes,
on a regular basis. When you talk jazz, those names never come up.
And we're changing that. That's changing. Yeah,
cool.
And it should change. Not because we've got to include the women. They're people. Let's just look at people as people. Let's just look at great musicians as great musicians. Yes, this is Black music. Yes, jazz music is Black music. It came from Black culture. But we include everyone in it. Music does not have color. Everybody can play it. Come on.
Yeah.
So I'm here for it. I'm here. And I hosted. So fortunate that I hosted Helen Sung today as a guest on Zoom. But she's fantastic. Right. And she blew these students. I mean, these students were like, oh my God, she blew the faculty on. Wycliffe Gordon came and viewed. Aaron Deal tuned in. Yeah. I mean, Helen Sung, really, she just was amazing. And it's like, she's pretty good for a woman. No, she's bad. And let me tell you something. Don't you run up on her bandstand thinking you're going to show her a thing or two. She'll wear you out.
We talked a little bit about your albums.
Yes.
And I want to talk about the covers because they have a story.
Do they?
The
story is anxiety.
And I miss getting the story because there's no liner notes anymore. And that was always a big part of the album experience, was sitting there listening to music, reading the liner notes, and understanding some of what the artist was putting into. Yes. So your Something Beautiful album, you've got children on the cover, Black children on the cover, and I never understood. I mean, my mind said, Black children are something beautiful.
You got it. You nailed it.
Oh, okay.
You just nailed it. You totally nailed it. It was, I thank God for social media. We could say what we want about Mark Zuckerberg, but there's some great things about Facebook. And on Facebook, I became friends with these people. This guy posted these pictures, these back in the day pictures of him when he was like 9, 10, all these kids that you see. And I said, I got to use that picture. So I got all the permissions and the license, all that kind of stuff. And I put that on the cover, Something Beautiful. And it was saying, first of all, look at how these kids are dressed. They're coming from school or from church. Mm-hmm. They're dressed, they're clean. People thought that the little bitty kid that's laughing, they thought that was me. He does look a little bit like me when I was younger. But you just look at the beauty of the picture. You look at the beauty of what they're wearing. You look at these beautiful faces, these beautiful smiles. There's a saying that goes, "We're all beautiful when we're young," and not everything you see in that picture, there's nothing but beauty. Now, it was considering the time, that was probably 1960 something. We know it was not a beautiful time for young Black children in the 1960s, depending on where you were in the country. We know that wasn't the truth, but that moment right there captured some beauty, and I had to use it.
The title, For Such a Time as This.
Yes, sir. It's biblical. It's biblical, and it's almost a curse. If you know the story, you have to understand the context, and I don't have time to go all into it. But basically, the idea of being used for such a time as this, and it stemmed from the George Floyd tragedy. And again, I believe that everything is preordained, predestined, no accidents, no coincidences. It's unfortunate that George Floyd's murder, it took a murder to bring about this worldwide awareness that the rest of the world really was not quite that privy to. They'd heard about it, but they hadn't really seen it in real life. And George Floyd, as tough as it sounds, was used for such a time as this. It wasn't a good thing, but look at what's happening as a result of his life being sacrificed.
A good thing.
We hope. We're seeing something.
Yeah, we're seeing something happen. And the last one is A Light in Darkness.
Yeah, that was really Jones' idea. I don't know what he was doing with that. That was all him. I was like, yeah, Willie, fine, whatever you want to do, go ahead, go for it.
Okay, we're running short on time, so real quick, you have a favorite road story from the Septet years with Wynton?
Favorite road story?
Yeah.
Favorite road story? Payday.
Okay. All right. We'll go with that. And real quick, 5 questions. Favorite time of year?
Fall.
Favorite getaway?
My mama's house.
Who are you listening to these days?
Isaiah Thompson.
Ooh.
That fella's rough. I better not find him. I'm telling you, he's rough. He's rough. He's rough.
Best performance ever?
Of mine?
Of yours?
Don't think I've had it.
Okay. And what do you do to relax?
I watch TikTok videos.
Okay, we all gotta get away. Eric, it's such a pleasure, man. You know,
it's mine. Thank you.
And you know, I gotta call you, and we gotta do this again offline and just hang out
anytime.
Do some FaceTime and just tell more stories, and you know, just talk about jazz. You know, ladies and gentlemen, Eric Reed.
Thank you, Carl Anthony, Leatrice, Karen, Robbie. Thank you.
You know, it's been an honor. I want to thank my producer, Robbie Wyndham.
Yes.
Our marketing guru, Karen Hatchett.
Yes.
And not to put her last, but always, Leatrice Elsie and the Hammonds House. All of this possible and all of this happened. This has been such a wonderful time spent. I tell you, every time I do this, I learn something about the music. I learn something about the people, and you know, our education never stops. So
true.
Thank you for, you know, I'm glad we got through everything and got you on board, and you were able to, you know, settle in at University of Tennessee. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the talk. I love the yak, so anytime.
Yeah. Okay, not 3 hours with Joe, like Joe Henderson, though.
On my dime.
On your dime.
Oh, Joe.
Leatrice, over to you.
I'm talking and I am muted. But Carl, as always, thank you so much. This was like a fantastic show. And Eric, always a pleasure. I'll wait for you. I'll wait for you to go.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Leatrice. My pleasure. Always a pleasure.
But, Eric,
thank you for years of friendship.
Absolutely, absolutely. But because we're friends, I'm going to ask you this question. Since Carl's already gone over, we're over, 17, 18 minutes. But I see a piano behind you. Do you mind taking us out with a little tune? Is that a piano?
Huh?
Is that a piano? Thank you. Take us out with a little Eric Reed tune. A little jig. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate you, bro.
I'm trying to get you a better view. Is that better?
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Eric, tell us what you're going to play so we'll know.
Now, what makes you think I know that? I'm a jazz musician. We don't think about these things in advance.
Oh, this is off the cuff, improv.
I'm gonna put my hands on the keys and let the Lord lead my way.
That's right. Totally.
Stablemates by Benny Golson.
All right. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
And everybody, thank you all for joining us for another one. We'll see you next time. And until then, peace.
Peace.